Hey everyone, this is Jason Feller, Feller Realty, and this is a continuation of my video series, basically just going over some of the key documents that go along with real estate transactions in Texas. This is the seller's disclosure notice that is on screen here, and this is part of the listing agreement. This is the form that the seller will fill out in relation to their property. This shows the condition of the property to the best of their knowledge. Doesn't mean that you have to be a handyman or a craftsman or a repairman to understand whether any or all of this needs repairs, or if the property even has it. So it gives you options to say unknown, yes, no, things like that. Again, it's just to ask questions, and if you specifically do know that things need to be repaired, then this is the document in which that would be handled. So in this, going just down from the top, you've got the address of the subject property. You come down and it asks whether the seller is or is not occupying the property, and if they haven't, or if they're not occupying it, how long have they not actually been there? So, a month, a week, a year. They've never lived there because it's an investor owner. So this is where you would answer that. When you come down into the next section, what you have here is you have all the items in which are possibly in the house. Of course, this is not every item, but this is a list of pretty comprehensive. And what you do here is it says, for instance, cable TV wiring. It's going to say, yes, you do have it, no, you don't have it, or you don't know, so unknown. And so for instance, in this house, I would say, yes, it has cable TV wiring. And then you're going to go down into each section of this document and explain it. Going across, you'll come down here, and then you're going to go to the second column, answer those, the third column, and answer those. Then you come down to the bottom. This section is handled a little bit different. It says, does the property have central AC? You would say yes, no, or unknown. So for this property, I would say yes. And then you have to say whether it's electric, gas, and then how many units. So for this property, it has electric AC, and it has 2 AC units outside. So you would do that going down all the way for each one of these and then go across. So evaporative coolers, no. Wall or window AC units, no. And then you, like coming down here to central heat, you say yes. It's powered by gas, and then it's got 2 furnaces in the house. So you do that just going down and answering them to the best of your knowledge. Again, you don't have to be a professional. It's just what what your knowledge is. Just don't be deceptive. That's essentially what this is. Page 2, it goes into more questions, and you just do a checkbox, which is the water supply is, what does that come from? Does that come in from the city, a well, a mud district, co-op, etc.? Then it's going to ask you, of course, was the property built before 1978? If yes, no, unknown. The reason they're asking you about that is lead-based paint. So prior to 1978, properties were painted with lead-based paint and have been found to be problematic if they're ingested by a child or items like that. So that's why they're asking that. Roof type, they're in my area, composition or like an asphalt or a tar styled roof is what is typical. So composition, and then I did, as an example, I did 5 years on this one. It could be a month, it could be 20 years. Then it's asking you whether it's an overlay. So what that means is when that roof was put on, was there another roof that was on there on the house already that did not get removed? So in my area, sometimes they used to have shake shingle roofs, and then they would come back in without removing that and put a composition roof right over the top of it. or 2 composition roofs. And a lot of the reason they ask that is for insurance purposes. The weight of the roof can be a problem for the joists of the the structure of the roof to hold that weight. Then the next section is just asking you basically, do you know of any items that you went over and inputted that the property had or didn't have or was unknown? Do you know of any of those specifically that have any problems? And if so, can you lay out the details? So for an example, I said zone 3 of the sprinkler system doesn't turn on. And that just allows them to know we have an upfront problem that we know we're going to probably see with that sprinkler system. Section 2 talks about pretty much the major things that make up a house. So basement, ceilings, doors, driveways, electrical, walls, floors. So all of the major structures of the house. And it just wants to know, are there any known issues with any of these? So I put no on all of these. And if you happen to have one, let's say the ceiling was had water come through it, or whatever the situation might be on that, then you could say yes, and then you could come into this section and explain what you meant by that. Section 3, it's not that common to answer yes to very many of these. You're talking about more of a I guess a rare situation. So aluminum wiring, asbestos, diseased trees, and you go on down that list and answer so on and so on, whether the house has it or has had any of those issues. On mine, I did answer yes to previous roof repairs because the roof had been replaced in the past. I also answered yes on settling, and that's just because you could see signs of small cracks that had happened. Not foundation movement, but just settling where the dirt had moved underneath the foundation. I explained those. This is the answer section of if you said yes to any of those, what that meant. And I went through and said previous roof repairs and also settling. In section 4, it's asking, are you aware of any item, equipment, or system in the property that is in need of repair, which has not been discussed prior to this section? So if there was something specific on there that had a problem, maybe a pool, just different things, and you would come in here and explain what was wrong if it hadn't been addressed above. Section 5 is asking various questions in regards to the house, and you would just go down and say yes, no, going all the way down. The first one's just asking, have you had any room additions, structural modifications, or alterations or repairs made without necessary permits or were not in compliance? So if you had done anything, added a room to the house, didn't get permits, etc., things like that, you would say yes. The next one is the information of your HOA. This property, for by example, I'm using it, that it is part of an HOA. If it is, what's the name of the HOA? What's the management company? The contact phone number, how much is it per year, quarter, semi-annually, etc. And then you would say mandatory, voluntary, etc. Then if there was in that HOA, if there's any amenity, a park, a pool, a tennis court, anything that is actually co-owned with the owners of the property as well as just the HOA. For this one, it's actually all owned and maintained by the HOA itself. And so you would just go through and look at all these questions and answer yes or no out to the left. And then, of course, on the bottom of each page, you would initial in these boxes where the seller is highlighted. In here, anything that you answered yes to on those previous questions, you would give more details. So I said the property is part of a mandatory HOA. And so I just explained that out. Section 6 is asking whether or not a survey has been attached. So if you have an existing survey, you can actually attach that on here to be seen. Section 7 is talking about whether you've had any property inspections or other Section 8 is discussing the tax exemptions that the seller is able to claim. And in Texas, homestead is of course very common. And then you go from there, whether you're maybe a senior citizen exemption, disabled veteran. That's all handled through the local appraisal district. So you'd know what exemptions you had on file. Section 9 is asking whether you've ever claimed on insurance any damage to the property. So say you had a hailstorm came through, you had the roof replaced, then you've had that done. Maybe the water heater came through the ceiling, it froze and broke and came through the ceiling, you had to file an insurance claim. And then what happens is that's a yes or no. And then Section 10 is just asking, have you ever had one of those claims and then you did not use the money in which you got to fix the damage? Section 11 is just asking whether you have properly installed smoke detectors that are indicated in Chapter 766 of the Health Code. And of course, you'd sign it, initial the bottom of the page. The next page is a signature panel for one seller or two. And then you go down into the service providers. And this is where you would fill out the information of the local service providers for your property. I've used TXU Electric, City of Somewhere. In our area, the sewer, water, and trash are all handled by the same company. And then Spectrum is a cable company that is within this area. So I've used Spectrum, and then natural gas, Atmos Energy is a local provider, and so on. And then you put the phone numbers coordinating to each one of those. Down at the bottom, you've got the signature of the buyer and the date and then the printed names. This is where the buyer will sign off on this disclosure when they're putting in an offer on the property. So it just shows that they've seen the condition of the property to the best of your knowledge, and they're acknowledging this document. So that basically goes over the seller's disclosure. Be glad to answer any deeper questions about this disclosure, how to fill it out, what it's asking. Feel free to call me at 469-774-3564. You can also text me at that same number and ask me any questions about this form, another form, or if you're interested in buying and selling a house. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.